It is time to talk about the camp battles that no one else is talking about. We've talked about the potential new starters in a few different spots, but what about the guys who need to win their battles in order to stick on the roster? We'll dive into that on today's show and much more. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Colts fans, thanks so much for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, Zach and I are going to decide whether we think it'll be Ben Banogu or Ifeadi Odenigbo making the final cut, as well as a couple of undrafted rookies in Sterling Weatherford versus JoJo Domann. We're also going to close with a surprise. It's something that Zach has cooked up in his head that I really don't know about either. So you guys will be just as surprised and entertained as I will be. So let's go ahead and get started by discussing a couple of guys who we both like at defensive end. That's Ben Banogu versus Ifeadi Odenigbo. A couple of names that you can't say rapid fire, of course, obviously, if you couldn't tell. So we know Kwity Paye and Yannick Ngakoue. That's the starters. That's easy. But there's some depth guys in there as well. I think we both feel good about Tyquan Lewis if he gets back and healthy, and Dayo Odeyingbo. But on the other side, you've got Banogu versus Odenigbo. So how are you feeling about this matchup here?
Yeah. So this matchup was one I brought up to you because although I see a scenario where both these guys make it, when you're doing the numbers game on that defensive line, like think about it, the Colts typically keep maybe 8 to 10 guys on that defensive line, which means, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 defensive ends probably because you'll have 4 defensive tackles. So Kwity Paye, Yannick Ngakoue are locks. Dayo Odeyingbo is a lock. Tyquan Lewis is probably making it. So if they do only keep 5, it comes down to Ben Banogu or Ifeadi Odenigbo. Yeah. And they're very different players. Very, very different players. Odenigbo is a guy who's been around the league for a bit, who's had some success, who been in different systems. He's been a run defender. He's been a guy who can rush the passer a little bit, but he's not really flashy. There's not much upside. He's kind of like the supercharged version of an Isaac Rochelle or of a Al-Qadim Muhammad, a guy who can step in, give you some good snaps, but you never really want him starting. You never want him to be your number one guy by any means. Ben Banogu is a guy who has lit up training camp the last couple of years, high draft pick that the Colts took in 2019, but he's just never seen the field in the last scheme that the Colts had, a scheme that was so dependent on being run defense first, run defense is everything. So Ben Banogu was kind of left in the dust, just like Kemoko Toure was, and now, he's obviously in Atlanta. So we've seen that with a lot of those type of guys. San Fran. Oh, my fault. Yeah. It came down to Atlanta and San Fran is what it was.
Yeah, he visited Atlanta. Yeah,
that's what it was. But when you're looking at a guy like Banogu, the upside is definitely much higher than Odenigbo. But if it goes the same way that it went with this last regime on defense, they'll probably go with a guy like Odenigbo instead of Ben Banogu. So I think we're all optimistic that this will be Ben Banogu making it if it came down to these two players. But if you're looking at as a coach, would you want the player that gives you the higher floor and can do multiple things for you, or the player with higher upside who could probably only do like one thing for you? I think that's a good debate that coaches are going to have. And honestly, I could see a coaching staff go either way, even though as fans, we're all going to say, oh, take the bendy guy, take the athletic guy, take the guy who looks like he can contribute in the more important phase more. But as coaches, you got to look at the whole game. And a guy like Odenigbo is very enticing for a coaching staff.
Yeah, this does seem eerily similar to an Al-Qadim Muhammad type of situation because he's not spectacular at any one thing, but you could throw him out there and he could do what he's asked. I think he's played inside a little bit. There's been periods of his career where he's kicked inside and had more snaps there, but overall kind of a more strong side defensive end type. Just a little background on these guys. Banogu, of course, he looked awesome last year in camp. sacks and tackles for loss just constantly. But he's only played in 34 career games in 3 seasons. I don't think he's got any starts. Only 2.5 sacks on his career, which all came as a rookie in 2019. Odenigbo, like you said, he's bounced around a bit. Cardinals, Vikings. He was with the Browns last year. He has started 15 of 41 games. His best season was also 2019 in Minnesota. He had 7 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. On his career, 10.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. So both of these guys are kind of chasing the production they once had a couple years ago. But yeah, it's on the surface, it seems like a why can't they both make it thing, but it seems very do or die for Ben Banogu at this point. We're a clean show here, but it's time to squat or get off the pot, basically. And in his defense, he was great last year in camp. Just like I said, like what more could he have done? But it's all up to the coaches on this one, what they see for a full season projection. Do you want the safer guy in Odenigbo who could probably do a touch more, or do you want the guy who could potentially pop off for, I don't even know what to project for Banogu just because it's been so low, but like you've got a bendy athletic guy who could get you some sacks and do some nice things against tackles, but that's really tough. I don't know at this point.
When we're talking Banogu, I mean, like again, he didn't play many snaps last year, but according to Pro Football Focus, and I think it was ESPN's pass rush win rate, he was the highest pass rush win rate on the Colts last year. I think it was like around 14%. So when he did get on the field, he was kind of a productive pass rusher. It's just he hasn't touched the field. And again, this isn't me advocating saying, oh, Ben Banogu is the missing link on this defense, and oh, they've been just benching a star player. But I do think in a normal, I don't want to say normal defense because Eberflus's defense isn't like abnormal, but in a defense like this one, if Ben Banogu started his career in this type of defense, the wide nines, the pass rush heavy defense, he probably gets a lot more run throughout his first 3 years in the league than what he had under Matt Eberflus. It's not to point blame at either party here. It's just how it was. Ben Banogu was not a fit for the way the Colts had their defense the last couple of years. But right now it seems like he's the perfect backup to Yannick Ngakoue. It's like he just is going to do the same things, similar size, similar athleticism, pass rush heavy, basically pass rush only with both of those guys. So I do think it's a much cleaner fit for him in this scheme. And I know we're talking like debating these two players, but there is a very real scenario where both these guys make it. They could obviously keep 10 guys. They maybe go a little weaker on defensive tackle because you have Odenigbo and you have Tyquan Lewis who can play 3-tech, even though that would mean Curtis Brooks being cut, which I'm firmly against. But we're talking scenarios here. There's so many ways they could play. They go cheap. They can go lighter at other positions. Maybe they go lighter at receiver or maybe at corner. Corner, I feel like it's going to have only 5 guys this year. I don't know if they're going to go with 6. So there are ways that they can make 10 defensive linemen fit. But if it were up to me in this type of scheme, I would go with the more upside pass rusher because this type of scheme that the Colts are going to be running, very Jim Schwartzian, Robert Saleh, and obviously Gus Bradley back with the Seahawks back in the Legion of Boom days. They like to have deep pass rushing. They want to have a unit off the edge of, it's not just Yannick and Kwity Paye are the only defensive ends rushing the passer. They want to have rotations. They want to have guys out there. And you're going to want to have a guy like Ben Banogu who has that ability to rush the passer at a higher level than maybe Odenigbo. And I like both players. If it goes either way, I'm cool. But I would probably lean more with the young athletic pass rusher. But again, I could see a coaching staff go with the more consistent floor type of player.
Yeah, to your point there, I think if you look at recent teams that have had success, either gone to or been to the Super Bowl, Tampa, San Fran, Kansas City, Philadelphia, they had really strong pass rushes, at least during the playoffs. Like
deep pass rushes too.
Yeah,
deep pass
rushes. Waves of them, like the Colts want to have.
Right. If you're looking at Philly or you're looking at those Robert Saleh teams, the Niners that have gone deep in the playoffs, it has been deep pass rushing groups. Defensive tackles rotating out, defensive ends rotating out, and like you still have your DeForest Buckners and your Nick Bosas and all those guys, but it's the rotation that's what kills you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Ben Banogu is like this elite rotational pass rusher, but you want to have athletic pass rushers just sitting there waiting for their 10 snaps a game where they get to get after the quarterback. So I just think with this type of scheme, Ben Banogu is going to fit very well, especially consider where he was coming from. But again, it could go either way, and I hope both guys make it. I'm a fan of both players, and I think they both fit really well.
I think both could make it. Gun to my head, I'm going to give the nod to Ben Banogu if it has to be one or the other, just because I think new coaching staff, it's just going to be a new leaf, and I think he fits better with them.
Definitely. So we're talking about guys who have to worry about their roster spot, but you know which guy doesn't have to worry about their roster spot? Dave. That's who it is. Dave doesn't have to worry about it. Nope. So level with me, guys. We've all been in a situation at some point in our lives when we were just a little tight on cash. Maybe you could only afford to put a few gallons of gas in your tank, or you got another save the date and you're wondering how you're going to afford a gift. That's where Dave can help. Dave is the banking app that can get you up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit card check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash.
Personally, I know Dave could really come in handy for me right now. I've mentioned my very expensive dog before. Plus, I had to run out and buy a new battery for my car literally just this morning. With training camp going, the Colts are stationed about 35 minutes from me. I have to have that battery working, and it's been getting closer and closer to dying. Had to do it. Financially, was I ready to do it? No, but had to do it. So Dave would have really come in clutch for me, I'm sure. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Future you will thank you. All right, so everyone kind of knows the name Ben Banogu by now. Ifeadi Odenigbo. I mean, he's new to the Colts, but
dude, they know that name just by how smooth you are pronouncing it. Just about every time. That's how they know. I mean, except when you started the show, you were a little off when you started the show. But outside of that, you've been so clean with that name. That's why people know it. And because when their spell check messes up Odenigbo, it goes to Odenigbo.
It really, I really think it might. But these guys, you've maybe not even really heard of other than on this show, because Zach and I like to mention them. That's a couple of rookie undrafted free agents, Sterling Weatherford and JoJo Domann. If we're assuming they're both kind of in the will spot, in that rotation spot. Really intriguing matchup. They've both in college had experience playing safety and linebacker. They both look the part. Athletically, they do as well. The thing of it is, if you're comparing the two, Weatherford is a good bit bigger. He's 6'4", 224 pounds. Domann 6'1", 230. In the spring, they've both done well. I witnessed both of them have pretty big plays. I think it was Weatherford jumped in front of Nyheim Hines at the goal line and picked off Nick Foles. Had plenty of green in front of him. Would have been a big play in a game. So I was really impressed by that. The good news for both these guys, with Darius Leonard starting on PUP, I'm sure EJ Speed is going to get the starting will snaps, but that opens the door for both of them to get those second and third team reps. And that's going to be a lot of reps, to be honest with you. And I'm sure that Darius may not play at all in the preseason, which will give them more live game reps. So yeah, absolutely. You don't need to see Darius out there. We know what he can do. And I know that's exactly what you're thinking as well. But you've studied both these guys pretty well leading up to the draft. What are you thinking their fit might be here in the summer?
Yeah, no, it's actually a fascinating battle, because I think if you asked anyone back in, say, March, where these guys would get drafted, Weatherford wasn't as big a name as Domann, but Domann was getting, third, fourth, fifth round hype. Weatherford was getting fourth, fifth, sixth round hype. Weatherford was coming off a really good Senior Bowl too. And both those guys ended up going undrafted, for a litany of reasons, age, positionless type players. There's reasons why in this type of class that both those guys could go undrafted, but I could be talked into either one of these guys. I think if you look at Doman is a much stronger zone defender, better instincts around the line of scrimmage. He's a very consistent player, and he's a high-level special teamer. He was a really good special teamer in college, so I do think he has a lot of things going for him. But if you're going off of pure potential, along with kind of some of the things he can do on film, I mean, Sterling Weatherford is a gigantic player. I mean, you watch him on film, and he is huge. I mean, 6'4", 224. He looks like he kind of looks like, gosh, people are going to throw this on Twitter or something. But I remember when I was a kid watching like Sean Taylor out there at safety, and I'm like, why is there someone so big playing safety? That's literally what it looked like in college, watching Sterling Weatherford run around at safety. It's like, why is the guy who's like the biggest player on defense running around at safety? And then he comes out and he has a great combine. He ran a 4.6, which was outstanding for a player that was going to convert to linebacker. 31.5-inch arms, or 31.375 arms. Only 23 years old too, which is kind of young considering the way draft classes are going now. Like a lot of draft like JoJo Doman will be turning 25, I think, in 2 days from when this podcast comes out. So happy early birthday to JoJo Doman there. And I also like Weatherford a little bit more in man coverage. I think he's just that bigger body with his athleticism. He just tends to stick a little bit more in man coverage. And all the issues he really had in coverage as like a zone defender came from him being a single high type guy in college, which I don't think he was ever really suited for with his size and his ability. So I think you go either way. Doman, if you want the instincts, the special teams, the that kind of stuff with your sixth linebacker. Weatherford, if you want the upside, the speed, the size, and a guy who could probably excel on special teams too. I mean, honestly, you could go either way with it. But like what you said, and like everything I've heard, is both these guys are, the Colts have these guys both in like high regard. They really like both these players, and they both had really strong springs. I expect that to carry here into camp, and it's going to be a really tough battle between these two to make the roster.
Yeah, and I don't know all of the inner workings of this move or why it happened. I know he'd had some injuries before, but the Colts let go of Jordan Glasgow this offseason, who was a really good special teamer for them. I mean, they had George Odom make All-Pro, and
what Ashton Dulin?
No, who was I just Glasgow. Yeah. So George Odom made All-Pro, and Glasgow actually had a better special teams grade than Odom that year. Was really nipping at his heels in terms of special team stops. And so they really liked him. They let him go. And I've got to think part of it was the comfort level with guys like Doman and Weatherford. I remember before the draft, I was studying Doman more so than Weatherford. But the biggest takeaway I came away from it was he would fit really well on special teams with the Colts.
Right.
You probably wouldn't see either of these guys on defense unless something has gone very wrong anyways. So you kind of project both of them as special teamers, and they really fit the bill. High effort guys, of course, decent size, and athletically they're similar, but you give the edge to Weatherford since he's bigger. If they're putting up comparable numbers, that's kind of give them the win there. But man, I could just really see them both as quality special teamers. I don't know what the likelihood is of them both making the roster. You've got to think it's one or the other when it comes to undrafted guys. But man, I think I would project ahead Weatherford to be a little better. If you had to throw someone on defense, he's probably got the higher upside as well. Doman's more of a polished and ready special teamer, but that's not necessarily why you're giving a last spot to, you want a little upside there as well. So gun to my head, I would say Weatherford on that one.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at this battle here, I mean, the Colts traditionally have kept 6 linebackers almost every year. They kind of dip to 5 every now and then. But of those 6 linebackers they've always kept, Glasgow's gone, Matthew Adams is gone. So they really only have 4 right now. If you factor in Brandon King making the roster for his special teams ability, then you have these two both competing for one spot. Or say Doman comes in from day one, he's a better special teamer than Brandon King. Then you could have both these guys making it. Because I think Weatherford, again, has that inside edge because I think he's just going to be a better player for defense going forward and immediately. But yeah, I could see this going either way if it comes down to the two guys, but I could also see a scenario where both of them make it because there are only 4 locks right now, and they're going to get a lot of reps with Darius Leonard out. So yeah, I could see it either way. I like both these players a lot. And even though I'm kind of impartial when it comes to Weatherford because I've talked to him a lot this offseason, and I just love the guy to death, but I could really see it going either way. These are both really talented players that honestly should not have been undrafted.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, guys, when both of these guys blow up training camp, you heard it here first.
Those guys, Curtis Brooks, Kylan Granson. What we're gonna do is say every single player's name that's at the bottom of the roster. So then when you hear it first, you heard it here on the podcast.
We are the gatekeepers of all Colts lower roster breakout guys. Yes. No one else is allowed to claim those guys. It's all of us.
We're going to grab Tony Brown as well. We're just going to grab all those guys, all of them.
Yep. If we've ever mentioned anyone on the show, they're ours.
Yes. All right, Jake, you ready to have some fun?
Let's have some fun, man. I'm excited. I don't know what you're about to do to me, but let's check it out.
All right, guys. So what we're doing with this last segment here today, before we get into training camp starts. I mean, if you guys are hearing this right now on Tuesday, training camp starting today, right?
They report Tuesday today. They start practicing Wednesday tomorrow.
Yep. So going into camp, there's always fun storylines, players that are going to be battling against each other. I remember a couple of years ago when the Colts first traded for DeForest Buckner, it was, we're so excited to see Buckner versus Quentin Nelson in practice. This is going to be the biggest thing ever. So what I've prepared is 5 little slide things here that Jake is going to read off because I want Jake to be our cold or just read these cold here. He hasn't even seen them. Nope. 5 huge matchups or just showdowns that we want to see in camp. And we're going to talk about them here once we bring them up. For you guys watching on YouTube, yes, graphic designing is my passion. I put a lot of effort into graphic
that
design.
Makes me more excited to see what this is going to be.
They're going to be the most bland stuff ever. But if you guys are watching on YouTube, please be nice to me in the comments. I just threw these together in a few minutes. But we're going to kick it off with the first one here, Jake. So what's our first little graphic say?
Curtis Brooks versus anyone that dares to cross him.
I think this is the most important one.
Yeah. Curtis Brooks versus the field. You take Curtis Brooks. If he's versus the field, you're going to consider him the plow. It's Curtis Brooks.
Yes, but no joke, though. Curtis Brooks, I know we've said this a lot, and this is obviously the Curtis Brooks podcast, which I got my shirt in the other day. You guys are be ready for the next show.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have my Curtis Brooks shirt. But Curtis Brooks, I just think looking at his film, I keep watching it because I'm like, what did I miss? Like, why am I so high on this guy? And I just watch his film, and I'm like, I don't know how these third stringers are going to block him in training camp. I don't see it. Maybe I'm surprised and he comes out and he's just not like his strength's not there, but I don't know, man. He's an animal on film and he's so athletic. I don't see him getting blocked very easily here in training camp.
Well, okay. So once they throw on pads and they start doing the one-on-ones and everything, let's say it's him versus like Wesley French and Josh Seltzner.
Right.
I'll give him the wins. Once he starts getting into Will Fries and Danny Pinter, and he probably won't go against Quentin Nelson if I had to guess.
But that'll be interesting to see against like Fries and Pinter, 2 guys who have NFL experience. But I'm excited. I think he's going to have a really good camp. And I know we've said that a lot here. But all right, our next one here, Jake. This is going to be iron sharpens iron with this next one. All right.
Stephon Gilmore versus Michael Pittman Jr. That's good.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, that is going to be a good one.
Michael Pittman Jr. was great last year. Great. But the one letdown I had, the only letdown I had was the one game I saw him against like a top tier corner was JC Jackson. Mm-hmm. And even though Wentz missed him on that deep shot, which would have made his stat line look a lot better, he was kind of handled for a lot of that game. JC Jackson was kind of all over him. I want to see how he looks against a guy like Stephon Gilmore, even if Gilmore's not out there all of this whole offseason, because Gilmore, 30-something-year-old corner, like he's not going to be out there for all of training camp. But the couple battles we see between those two guys are going to be very telling for the Colts' future cornerback 1 in Gilmore and future wide receiver 1 in Pittman Jr. So I'm really intrigued by that battle.
Yeah, I am too. I think so. I think a lot of the like over the middle stuff could go to Gilmore.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that Matt Ryan puts up high or just any 50-50 situation, I'm going to give it to Pittman. I think I'm going to take a coward's way out here. But no, I just see a lot of the stuff where they're closely engaged and everything. I think Gilmore's really crafty.
Mm-hmm.
And although you made a piece on all the different ways that Pittman like gets open and everything,
Right.
which is good.
Right.
Gilmore knows how to defend that. I'm sure, he's seen it before. But when it comes down to size and athleticism, man versus man, that's got to be Pittman all day.
Yeah, but again, Gilmore is one of the most perfect technicians when it comes to corner. He's going to be so good at just punching that ball out and attacking. So it's going to be one heck of a battle. I'm super pumped for that one. This next one I got here is rookie versus rookie, uber athlete versus uber athlete.
Ooh.
And here we go.
Nick Cross versus Jelani Woods. Okay. I'm going to give that to Woods. As much as I like Cross, and he's got decent size for the position. Jelani Woods is just he's built different. You know what I mean? Like
literally.
Yeah. He is enormous. He's athletic as all get out. Like, I mean, he's got stuff to work on too, just like anyone else does. It's not like he's coming out here and he's Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, whatever. But this is two against each other, not seasoned vets. They're both kind of younger players too, at least to football in their positions. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just going to be raw athleticism and size, one-on-one again, which I've got to always give that to Jelani Woods. Right.
No, I'm with you. And obviously, again, with this matchup, they're not going to be going against each other every single day in camp. There's going to be days where Cross is going to be in the slot, maybe covering some receivers and stuff. But I'm just so excited to see these two freight trains against each other for the couple reps that we get. I mean, these are both guys.
Violent.
Yeah, they move at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Woods is 260, right? At 6'7", and then
something like that. Yeah.
And then Cross is like 215, 220, and running 4.3. I mean, these guys are freaks, and that's why the Colts drafted them as high as they did. They're going to be super fun to watch.
I'll add a quick layer to it. I think when Ehlinger is the quarterback, it's going to go to Nick Cross, and I think when it's Foles, it's going to go to Woods.
I'm glad you said that. You know what? I'm going to skip this next one just so I can go to because you brought up Sam Ehlinger. So here's our next one.
Sam Ehlinger versus Strong Gust of Wind. All right. Now that's not nice, Zach.
I had to throw it to him. I had to do it to him, right?
You had to do it to him. No, so yeah, that's a lot of people get confused about the whole arm strength thing. There's a difference between the velocity you can do on fitting the ball into tight windows and just being able to throw the ball far and putting air under it. Ehlinger can throw the ball far and put air under it.
Right.
But when you need a precise instant rifle it through their thing, he's probably not your guy. He's not Chad Pennington, but like he's not got the rifle arm.
Dude, if he were to be Chad Pennington, that'd be a great career arc for him. But in all honesty,
Chad Pennington's arm was like throwing a balloon animal, though.
Right.
Did not always look good.
In all honesty, before I move past Sam Ehlinger, because it's going to be tough for him to make the roster this year. Obviously, you want to keep a young quarterback, but with signing Nick Foles was kind of saying, like, look, we need to upgrade this backup quarterback spot, and you only have so many roster spots. But Sam Ehlinger is a quarterback who does everything right, mechanically, mentally. It's just physically, I don't think it's there. Again, throw it with good air under it down the field, but you're not going to get him rifling the passes that you need to have at the intermediate level. But I hope he makes it to the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster, because I do love having him around the team, and I think he's a great dude. So I did just want to throw that joke out there because this might be the last time we ever get to make a joke about it.
Right. My jokes are corny. Yours are just mean. You have a body count on your jokes.
Gen Z versus what are you, millennial or?
I'm a millennial. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Last one here. Just in this one, we're gonna do real quick. But this is just gonna be the one that gauges the readiness of one player. And here you go, Jake.
Yannick Ngakoue versus Matt Pryor. Okay. So Pryor's no slouch athletically, but Ngakoue just has the physical and athletic tools. I don't think he's going to whoop him rep in and rep out like constantly. I think Pryor will have his wins, but I've got to give that to Ngakoue.
Right. I think this one is more important for us to watch because is Matt Pryor our left tackle this year or maybe going forward? If he gets his butt kicked every single day in practice, like we were seeing with the left tackles last year in camp.
Yeah.
I mean,
last
every
year
single
was
day.
bad, regardless who it was. I think
Ben Banogu was getting 30 sacks of practice.
Yeah, it started out as Sam Tevy, then Julian Davenport, and Will Holden had a little bit of run.
Right.
We could clearly see that. I mean, the Colts by no stretch had a great group of edge rushers. Like they had 33 sacks. The tackles were just revolving doors last summer. It was not good, and you can tell right away that it's not going well. So we'll be able to see with Pryor. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue is not always going to be the litmus test. I mean, he's an above average pass rusher, but if he's getting whooped, that's not going to be good.
Right. That's what I'm saying here. I want to see Pryor hold his own against Ngakoue, against Kwity Paye, against Dio, whoever he's up against. You want to see your future at left tackle, or your current future at left tackle, holding his own in these matchups. So I think whoever he's against, specifically against Yannick Ngakoue, I think they're all going to be really big matchups for him. So those are the ones I'm watching. Obviously, 3 of those are very important. Curtis Brooks is one in my heart. And Sam Ehlinger, I hope he has a good camp, despite what I said.
Well, that was a good game. I like that. You'll have to throw more of that at us as camp progresses.
Like I said, graphic design is my passion. You guys could see. I mean, those designs were. Obviously. It took me weeks to do each one of those.
Well, it was beautiful, and you could tell you put a lot of time and work into that. Well, anyways, we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Again, we mentioned Players Report on Tuesday. We'll be obviously speaking with several of the players there at media availability. We should also be speaking with Chris Ballard, the Colts GM. The team's first practice is on Wednesday. We'll see, there's going to be a bunch to report on there. There's going to be players in and out. We'll have it all for you.
Yeah, and guys, make sure you're following us on social media at Zach Hicks 2, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Locked On Colts. That's where we all are on Twitter. Make sure you get those follows up. And then also here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can see my wonderful graphics I just put up for this last segment. And then if you want to find all of our written work, I mean, it's going to be a busy, busy week for written work at the Horseshoe Huddle. So horseshoehuddle.com. See everything that we're putting out there for training camp. And again, rate, review, subscribe wherever you guys listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever. We appreciate all the reviews so far, but keep it up, guys. We're trying to get into that top 100 for sports podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. We really need to get there. I know that would be really cool for us. But thanks again, anyways, just for listening and making us your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen of the day, the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep you guys dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. We'll see you guys tomorrow.